rise and shine. Pour yourself a cup of coffee and tune in to Good Morning Aurora. News, weather, and really cool interviews. Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m.
Ma, my friends are watching.
Yeah.
Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. The time is 8:02 a.m. You are listening to and watching Good Morning Aurora, the second largest city's first daily news podcast. It's Friday, the 21st of October. First of all, we made it through a week, tough week, hard week, difficult week, but for some, I hope it was a prosperous and a productive week nonetheless. We had a heck of a week. Last night, you will notice that we were once again with our partners of Kane County government, doing another discussion with them. This was about domestic violence, going from victims to offenders and how we can interrupt that cycle. And it's also Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which I did not know was started in 1987. I did not know that until I read up on it to prepare for yesterday's debate. So please watch that. It was really good. And if you or anyone you know could benefit from any of the information, please reach out to the Kane County government. The website is embedded in yesterday's episode. But today's a brand new day, and I have some great guests here today. We have pastors to talk about the pre-arrest diversion. See that? I'm still thinking in the past. Curtis, no, it's Pre-Trial Fairness Act, which will be rolling out January 1st. Today's guests are Mr. Eric Dorsey, Director of Community Freedom, correct?
Correct.
Pastor Fish, St. Mark's Aurora, and Pastor John Bell, Wesley United. How you guys doing?
Very good. Thanks for having us.
How's the coffee?
Delicious.
All right.
And local.
That's right. Tread well.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to discuss pretrial fairness, and this is going to be open to all of you guys to come in and speak accordingly. I do want to plant the flag in the conversation as we talked about. This will be from the faith perspective. So everything that we will be sharing today will be from that. We are not going to mix any type of politics in it in any way, shape, or form. So I'm happy to have you guys here. I know Pastor Bell and Fish. Good to meet you, Mr. Dorsey, today.
Absolutely.
So first things first, what is the Pre-Trial Fairness Act, and why should people be on the lookout for it?
Yeah, well, the Pre-Trial Fairness Act started with a group of really stakeholders across the state in 2016 as an effort to address the problems with money bond. And out of that grew a coalition. Now it's called the Coalition to End Money Bond. And so they've been working for several years to draft legislation that would address the problem with money bond, and we can talk about what the problem with money bond is. And that culminated with a lot of community stakeholders across the state participating and drafting that legislation. I think the killing of George Floyd, I think, was a major impetus to get some legislation in the books to really address the problem that we were having, that we continue to have. And then this past year, the state legislature passed the Safety Act, and then as a part of that Safety Act is the Pre-Trial Fairness Act. And the Pre-Trial Fairness Act is something that we've been very involved with, and faith community has been involved with.
Right.
I think it's important to know that the coalition has been working with law enforcement. So again, when this was written, that will take effect in January 1, I think there's misinformation that was just done like in a vacuum, but it was done with community stakeholders, people on the ground, and important folks that this would impact, with the idea of racial equity at hand, understanding that there's a disproportionate amount of Black and brown people in jail, and so how do we recognize that and make amends to bring about restorative justice to our criminal justice system. And so 2016 and beyond, I mean, this has been conversation and community leaders meeting about this, and again, because it's such a hot topic, is because it's an election year, right? It's midterms, and that's why we hear all the misinformation, and we hear the purging of this Pre-Trial Fairness Act. We hear misinformation about how January 1, everyone's going to be dangerous, let go. I mean, all this is meant to draw emotion, and it's not based in really what the act or the ending of cash bail is about.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because it's sad and it's demeaning too. Because like if you guys are familiar with it, but you know, and even as I've been following along, law enforcement was abreast of the procedure.
Yes.
The entire since its inception.
Correct.
Since being thought about.
Correct.
You know, it's just unreal that something so big that would be such a big change to the state could happen with no law enforcement input or perspective in it. So that is important to note.
Right.
Now the Safety Act, let's kind of nutshell that for people. It'll change many things, such as ending money bond.
Correct.
What are some of the other things for those who may not know that will be changing when the Safety Act is passed?
Yeah, I think that hurt.
Well, I'll start off. I mean, I've read, again, I don't pretend to be a policy expert, so I want to give that disclosure.
You look like one, man. I was going to say, you look good.
I slept at a Holiday Inn last night. But I will say that there are a lot of things, and I think I could speak generally for everybody that has an opinion about the Safety Act. It's not a perfect bill. I mean, there are things in it that I look at it and say, well, I don't know if I agree with that line item or that particular thing. But in general, I think it's a step in the right direction. I think there are some line items in there that has to do with governing or overseeing the actions of police in the field, which I think becomes a little tricky when you start to look over the shoulder of the law enforcement officers that are in the community, in the field, and kind of governing split-second decisions that they have to make in moments can be kind of tricky. And when you start over-legislating split-second decisions or human reactions to situations, that's where it gets really difficult. But I would say overall, it's a step in the right direction. It removes a lot of barriers that cause issues in communities and families, economically, socioeconomically, and then, as you know, Pat said, just a lot of the issues that our old system had with targeting or impacting marginalized community, Black and brown communities, many of those barriers will be lifted, and I think that's what we need to look at.
Right. And I do think that, as you said, it's the fact that it would make changes to the way some police departments operate is probably the primary reason why there is consternation about it, why there is pushback towards it. But it's about educating people too, though, because you know, everybody can agree for the need for effective policing. That's a must. But doing it in a professional way where people are not marginalized and singled out is just as much of that
public safety issue.
Absolutely.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, the Safety Act. The myth is that it's going to make our neighborhoods less safe. That's not true.
Right.
That this was all created for public safety, and there are stats that show. I mean, again, this is all based in research, right? This ending cash bail, as well as the Safety Act, and had police officers at the table. Again, and it's all about community safety. And so this myth that this is going to make us less safe by passing this is just not true.
Right.
Like Eric is saying, we could disagree with some of the nuances, but this is where coming back to the table, and we're a part of those conversations, and we'll continue to be and work with law enforcement to make our communities safe, but also represent the communities that have been neglected or mistreated.
Right.
And so that's where we're trying to, from a faith perspective, always bring those folks to the forefront, and stop saying that they don't matter, because they do.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll say this. It does make me, so when Pastor Fish reached out, Pastor Bell reached out and talked about, and asked about doing this, Like, I immediately said yeah, and it made me happy because I really appreciate people in the faith community taking this issue or these types of issues and being a part of the discussion. I think that for a lot of people, if they've been impacted by the system, turning to your faith has been a help. But wow, how much more of a help and how much more effective is it to have your faith leader be a part of the discussion? Because the discussion is still ongoing.
Yes.
And people who've been impacted, you don't, for a lot of them, the change or the healing doesn't happen overnight. So I do like the fact that you guys are actually hand in hand with it.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about kind of
Time
your
is 8:12,
experience?
Yeah, I would say in my opinion, faith leaders should be. Because the one thing about looking at issues like this strictly from a political lens is that you're dealing with policies and stats and figures and agendas. Whereas as faith leaders, we're primarily, or we should be, focused on people,
Right.
and the impact on people. And so most of our legislation is intended, it doesn't always work out like this, but it's intended to reflect what's in the best interest of the community, of the people. But we know that it doesn't always work like that.
No.
And so I think that our voice is important because if you really care about people, if you care about what's in the best interest of people, healing people, giving people opportunities, believing in the potential of the human spirit, that's what faith leaders are. And so sometimes laws are written with a certain expectation or a certain thought that this would be the outcome. And if that outcome doesn't come and we see that people are being harmed by it,
Correct.
it's our responsibility to speak up on behalf of people that don't have a voice, whose voices cannot be heard. And so I think we're an important voice, not from a religious perspective, but speaking on behalf of individuals, people that are made in God's image, that we're called to represent in discussions like this.
I'm curious, is what you gentlemen are doing, is this new in the faith community? Like taking that forward kind of action?
Well, I mean, if you look at like just Aurora, so Hesed House was started by a coalition of congregations. The Interfaith Food Pantry, was started by a coalition of interfaith communities. So, when we talk about the faith community historically has always been at the forefront of leading communities in addressing the needs of people, right? And that comes from our faith, it comes from our teachings, it comes from our from our scriptures, from our sacred texts, from the Bible, that, and a lot of other faith communities as well are driven in the same way and participate in this. And so the problem that we're having now is, and this is what I talk about it with the faith community that I'm at Wesley is, look, we volunteer our time, our money into ending homelessness, to providing housing for people, and to make sure that people have got food on their table, and realizing that there are these systemic issues that are just cycling people back into these programs over and over and over again, and they're not able to get out of poverty.
Nice.
And the Pre-Trial Fairness Act is one of those pieces of the system that continues to put people back into poverty. And so if we're, I had someone once say to me that, when you're standing at a riverbank and all of a sudden all these people are coming down that need to be pulled out, right? You start rescuing them and you're pulling them out of the river. And all these people you keep pulling, and then at some point you think, well, who's throwing all these people into the river, right?
Yeah.
And so you've got to get ahead of it a little bit and say, why are people having such a difficult time? And so I think faith communities are beginning to realize, and some have for a long time, that you've got to address some of these systemic problems that are going on. Absolutely. And so that's why it's natural for us and for faith communities to be involved with this, because it continues to work at the issues that historically we've always been working on.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you brought that and made that point too about Interfaith Food Pantry. All of the pieces that have already been in Aurora and their actual faith roots. I mean, so the work has been being done.
Absolutely.
The time is 8:16. Annie Fish, good morning to you. Hey.
I do know that person.
Josue Pais, good morning. Saul Olivas, good morning. Norma Peterson, William Miller III, good morning to you. And Katrina Bowe, good morning. Our dear friend Joe Jackson is here. He says, good morning. And yes, that's one of the many amazing members of the Fish family. So glad we're talking about this. Got to counter the fear mongering. The Safety Act will improve public safety, save taxpayer money, reduce jail populations, and keep people in their communities where they belong instead of a cage. David Lloyd, thank you very much for your comment. The time is 8:17 a.m. So let's talk about the Pre-Trial Fairness Townhall taking place Sunday, October 21st at Society 57. All right. What's going to be happening that day?
Yeah, so as Eric said, we are not policy experts by any stretch of the imagination. We are trying to create a platform for education and awareness because we recognize that people have questions. I have members of my own congregation, as I'm sure you guys do too, that fall anywhere on this. And so rather than telling them this is what you should believe, again, I want people to critically think for themselves, but to have the information that's actually based in fact. And so we are organizing this town hall for that reason. Anybody can come. You don't have to be a member of our faith communities. Actually, it's for the community. But we will have speakers, and I'll have John, I know you have that out, share with you in a little bit of who's going to speak. But we have various people that represent within the community that can share what the law is and how it's going to bring safety. I like the comment, how it's going to keep people in our communities. And again, what this means for us come January 1. And so you'll hear from at least smarter people than myself, but definitely, again, get more information about the Pre-Trial Fairness Act. And then that's really what we're about, is creating a space for discussion that's civil, right? And where you can learn more without somebody trying to point you one way or the other, but just lay it out to you on the table, and then you make the call from there.
Right.
But John, if you want to share who the speakers are, because I'm excited about who is coming and who is speaking.
Yeah, so there'll be community groups that'll be there who'll be resources as well.
Also true.
And then so we'll have a series of speakers. There's going to be a policy expert who's going to talk about the explanation of the Safety Act, the Pre-Trial Fairness Act, and the statewide conversation that's going on. Martha Paschke from Kane County Pre-Arrest Division is going to talk about how the Pre-Arrest Division program and how it interacts with the new legislation. And then King County's Chief Judge, Clint Hull, and the Honorable Julia Yetter will be doing a presentation talking about processes and plans and what will change in January. And I think it's important to note that Chief Judge Hull has been part of the implementation team for the state around the Safety Act and its implementation.
Awesome. That is wonderful. Okay, so folks may be familiar with Wesley United and St. Mark's Aurora, but what is Community Freedom? Can you explain the organization, please?
Sure. So Community Freedom is our initiative to plant churches inside of prisons and jails. So we do programming with inmates inside of local prisons and jails. So I work closely with Illinois Department of Corrections officials, sheriff's departments, to create a culture of rehabilitation. And so we look to not just go in there and talk at these guys or preach at them, but we want to build community with them, because we believe in community is a path for restoration. Once you identify, like I mentioned earlier, I use a phrase, I believe in the potential of the human spirit. From the faith-based side, I would say every man is made in God's image and likeness. We believe in the Imago Dei. That means no matter what they've done or haven't done, if we can tap into what their potential is, then we can begin to bring that alive, and it begins to transform their heart and mind. And so that's what we look to do in the jails and prisons. And then we have a reentry component where we meet guys outside once they get released to help them transition back into society, get reacclimated, and then we connect them with resources to help them get all of the other things in their life put back together, housing and jobs and employment and all of those other things that are essential to their transition.
Right. The time is 8:21 a.m. I'm curious too, in some of the, without perhaps giving away anyone's personal story, how often do you guys meet with or speak with or get asked for help from people who have been impacted by the system? Does it happen often, kind of thing?
Well, I know for me, it's part of what I do. So daily, I'm in contact with families that have been impacted by incarceration, individuals post-incarceration, people going into the system that have just gotten arrested. So I've seen it all, I've heard it all, and I've been doing this work for years. That's why I'm particularly sensitive to the impacts of our criminal justice system and some of the unintended impacts of it, I think, but some of the things that have been systemically have evolved from racist ideologies from the very beginning that has never been dealt with. It's just evolved or moved or shifted over time, but still been devastating to our communities. And we can dig into that a little bit more later. But yeah, I'm in touch with people all the time that have been impacted by this.
Yeah.
I'll use one gentleman that I've been working with, and again, it's systemic, right? And so his whole life he has been told he is a thing, because he is a black man, and helping him see he is that, but so much more than what the system wants to see him as. Right. But how the system has gone after him, and he has a record, and so therefore he is this and this and this. But helping him to rise out of that and realize he is so much more than that. But again, if we don't invest in these individuals, they just continue to perpetuate that narrative or believe it. And so as faith communities, how do we step in and say, you are made in the image of God, you aren't your worst day, you aren't your worst choice, but you are the potential of the human spirit. You are human, because we all make mistakes. It doesn't matter of color, and so how do we recognize the system and work to speak to that, and also work alongside the individual who's been impacted, or the folks that have, to bring them out of that and into a new day. And there's organizations, Neighbor Project, in which, Curtis, I know you're a part of, and so many others that are doing this, right? Trying to bring people out of that generational, poverty, create a new narrative. But I see it even in jailing, right? Like, people have lack of opportunity, addiction, mental health, right? If they're going into the jail, how do we invest in them? Which again, going into the jails, they think of themselves as, what the system is telling them, right? But how do we go in and say, you aren't that, but let's tackle the thing that systemically put you there, put you in the river, so that you don't keep falling in the river. But until communities of faith, until the system starts doing that, we're just going to continue to warehouse people, and the system just continues.
I've always thought, and my words, not you guys', but I've always been of the impression, and this is kind of one of the things that Sheriff Hain and I talked about a couple months ago, that if it were truly, if American legal history, had the book, right, been applied fairly, if what it said on paper was actually what it came out to be, there'd always be an argument made against mass incarceration, but the whole thing wouldn't have been as big of a problem as it has become.
Absolutely.
I really believe it's simply because law has been applied so unfairly. On purpose.
Amen.
That's why.
That's why we're here.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? If the book, if the paper matched up at the end,
absolutely,
it wouldn't be that big of an issue. It would simply be something that needed to be changed, because incarceration is just dehumanizing. So,
I think it's important to say too that what we're dealing with right now is all this fear mongering that's going on. Right. And fear mongering, man, has been around for as long as people have been around.
Absolutely.
And it has been connected to racism and all of these efforts to apply these laws differently. So, part of someone said to me recently, like, you're never going to get rid of fear mongering. And it's been so embedded in who we are. And I think what we're just trying to do is say, look, as people of faith, God says, fear not. Like, we need to stop being afraid.
Right.
And we need to sit down and figure out how to create a just society where everyone is created equally and where everything is applied equally to everybody, the same to everybody.
Right.
And we're not there, and we've got a long way to go.
Yeah.
But we've really got to be serious about this fear, because it's just whenever someone's trying to keep someone down, they just use it, and it's a problem. And we hope that in some ways that what we're doing is trying to remind people to not be afraid and to not give in to those historic narratives of why we should be afraid.
Absolutely, yeah. Which is why, once again, that's why we're pleased to have you guys on the show and talk about this kind of thing, because I do identify that there's going to be people who will make mistakes in society for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
And there's many factors behind that, but we don't, as a community, have to fear A, what we don't know, and B, what we're being told by people who also don't know. I mean, it's some of the things that I've read. On January 1st, they're going to unlock Cook County, give them all a bus pass, and send them to Skokie. Like, that's just not. That's just not gonna.
Violent felons are coming to your town.
Yes,
Type of thing.
yes.
That's just not true.
And I think last night's program, they were talking about how we need to shift the system to rehabilitation.
Right.
We need to shift the system so that it's actually resourcing people to address the underlying issues that are going on. And right now, what we're doing is we're just incarcerating people forever with no real means of change.
Right.
And the Safety Act and the Pre-Trial Fairness Act deal directly with that issue of how do we help people get out of the problems that they're facing, or address people making mistakes,
Right.
and just under pressure. Making a choice that they ultimately come to regret.
Absolutely.
And so how do we give them a second chance and help them really, thrive in their lives?
Yeah.
Right.
Can I drill down on that a little bit?
Absolutely. Please do.
So you talked about the narrative of public safety. We have a false narrative of public safety that there are bad people, and I guess they're good people, and we need to lock the bad people away,
Right.
and then the good people will be safe. That is such a fallacy, because what we're really talking about when we're dealing with public safety is you have to include the concept of rehabilitation, because what most people don't understand, because they don't see people, they see stats and figures, and they see the titles of what crimes were committed.
Right.
But trauma, and you talked about PTSD, you did a show about PTSD. Poverty leads to PTSD. It leads to trauma. Children who are raised in poverty have higher ACE scores, these adverse childhood experiences that impact how their brain is wired, how they're functioning, their decision making, and typically that will lead to criminal thinking and criminal behavior.
Right.
And so we need to move from asking what's wrong with people to, what happened to them.
Right.
And our systems and structures should be designed to address what happened to people, because mental health issues, trauma issues, substance abuse issues are real issues that people are dealing with, and those are majority of the driving factors to criminal behavior.
Right.
And so instead of coming on the back end and saying, let's hammer people for their behavior, let's create systems to heal people. And that's going to be the best, most effective way to keep our community safe, because most of these men, whether we like it or not, men and women, they're getting out. They're going to be released back into our communities. So what are we doing to heal the human soul and to give opportunity to see them as people so that our communities can be safer? Because if you're leaving people who are traumatized in a cage, you're re-traumatizing and you're re-aggravating, you're dehumanizing them, and then you release them to the public expecting them now to act normal. That's ridiculous. It's counterintuitive.
Right.
And so we have the responsibility to speak up, to say, let's address these systemic issues, because they're not effective in accommodating or accomplishing the goals that they were meant to accomplish. So let's fix this stuff. So that's kind of the perspective I have on the public safety narrative. We need to be more involved in healing and rehabilitating people.
That was way better than what I said.
Teamwork. Yeah, the state's attorney and the sheriff last night gave me two interesting points. I think the sheriff said 90% of people incarcerated are getting out within 5 years.
Yeah.
So they will be returning,
Right.
and also it's $23,000, I believe, to house an inmate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
$23,000 to house a guy who's self-medicating.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, this is just it's
There's
not
a better way.
Exactly. It is a
better way.
It is a better way. So the time is 8:31. I wanted to just interject real quick with that quick piece of news that I had, but I want to also remind people that on Sunday the 21st, from 2 to 5 p.m., once again, the Kane County Pre-Trial Fairness Townhall. This is a free event open to the public. It'll be held at Society 57, 100 South River Street, right across the street from the Aurora Public Library, and also down the street from McCarty Mills. And I want to say good morning to Dora Sanchez Soto. Thank you for tuning in, friend. Victoria Halamaldonado. Good to see you guys. Okay, real quick, ladies and gentlemen. Aurora City Council set to vote on downtown apartment plans next week. I'm going to go through this briefly. It's 8:32. City Council's set to vote for a new 7-story apartment building on the west side of the Fox River downtown. Aldermen meet as the committee of the whole this week, and move those plans for the 7-story, 190-unit Pacifica Riverview complex between the river and North River Street next to Wilder Park. So you can picture that's the Hollywood Casino parking lot back there, going from Penny Street, which is the alley kind of behind Gillerson's, all the way to where the hill starts, right across from Wilder Park. Big piece of land there. The article continues. The preliminary plan and conditional use were put on the consent agenda, meaning they are likely to be approved. The 2.34 acre development would have studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom apartments, as well as 10 row houses directly along the riverfront. The 2-story row houses would feature terraces on their rooftops, and the development would also have a communal rooftop terrace for the entire complex on its 3rd floor. The development would also have about 2,000 square feet of retail on its 1st floor, a party room, and a workout center. Developer is the Windfall Group, which also is developing the Pacifica Square Shopping Center on the far east side of Aurora. Now, I know what you are thinking. Curtis, affordable housing? Well, stay tuned. None of that sounds affordable housing. Not in our traditional thought process, but we will report back accordingly. You know that we are dedicated to getting you that news. The time is 8:34 a.m. Annie Fish says Sunday is the 23rd, not the 21st. Just don't want to get people to get confused. Oh, is that a typo on the thing?
I think today was, it is the 23rd, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So if I messed that up, I apologize.
We got a button for that. Hold on, watch this.
I think there's 2 dates on there.
Scratch it up.
There's a day. There's 2 dates on there. Today's date for the interview, and then Sunday's date for the
Awesome. Okay.
for the town hall. Sunday's the town hall.
Sunday to the 23rd at 2 o'clock.
See, our listeners. See, that's why we love our listeners.
Right.
Thank you very much for
Sounds
helping
right.
us out. Nora Peterson, thank you very much. Hope everyone has a safe and happy weekend coming up. Thank you. And David Lloyd, good points. Poverty is the main reason for criminal behavior. Something we can solve with a better social safety net. Like that. Okay. So, what do you guys? It's an opinion based, but what do you guys anticipate happening on the 1st? How do we see life? I'm just thinking it'll kind of be a trickle of things. I know there's probably gonna be some negative stories and more disinformation will probably come about to, it's happened now, look, all of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you guys anticipate locally, and what are you guys preparing for come the 1st?
Yeah, I meing, I think it's important, going back to the legislation itself, is that, what's going to happen on January 1st is that someone's going to be pulled over, or a police officer is going to show up. And instead of being immediately arrested and being thrown into a cage, they're going to have 48 hours to come to court. And during that 48 hours, they're going to get to actually meet with a public defender or an attorney. And they're going to be able to find out what kind of services and things are available to them to help them. with whatever they're dealing with.
Right.
And then they'll go before a judge, and then it'll go from there. And maybe they'll go through, in Kane County, through the pre-trial diversion,
Pre-arrest diversion,
pre-arrest diversion program. But I just think it's important to highlight that what this is doing is it's creating a more just and fair process for people. Right. So what happens now is that if you're arrested, you're thrown into a cage, you show up in the morning, and I've done court watching. I mean, we've done court watching here in Kane and DuPage County, and seen what happens to people. And 8 o'clock in the morning, they've got an hour because the courtroom needs to be used for something else. So you've got to process all of these people within an hour. So little time, if any, is ever spent on really trying to understand what's going on, what's happened. I mean, I've been in the courtroom and watched where people are confused, public defenders, state's attorney's office, or the DA are confused about even who the person is and what their criminal record is, and what's actually been going on. And so it's a scramble, and it's not a fair process right now. And then the whole conversation is around how much can you afford, you know, to get out, which it's crazy that we're asking people what their job is, how much money they make, who they're responsible to, in order to figure out if we can charge them money to get out. And so what this does is it eliminates all of that. So we're going to have people who aren't going to lose their jobs. We're going to be able to be home with their families and help their kids out, help take care of a parent. And they're going to be able to go see doctors and get the help that they need, and not be sitting in a prison cell for a week, a month, 5 years, whatever. I mean, so that's the biggest benefit. And I think for us, the hope is that people are going to be able to continue their lives. They're not going to be so disruptive that they end up coming and seeking help and resources that the state is causing them to need and not helping them with.
Causing them to need.
Yeah.
Causing them to need. Absolutely. Because if you struggle from substance abuse, there's people who are struggling from substance abuse and work. If you get arrested or you are incarcerated, you spend the night in jail. If you lose your job, you are more likely to continue or increase your self-medication.
Right.
Yeah.
A guy lost his job, he's self-medicating. Does he really have what? $3,000?
Right.
I mean, what is the it's in a way now I feel, which is going to lead to my next question though. I feel two ways. Again, my words, not yours. I feel two ways. I feel somewhat. I'm not a cynic. I'm more of an optimist, but I feel like, wow, we're just now making, isn't it kind of, I don't even have the word. It's almost like mentally insulting to think that we're seeing things now. Now the data shows, and it's really, that's why I just use my voice to help what's good, because there's enough morass to get into about why this and why that, we need to be thinking forward. But the question I was going to get to is, do you think, or do you feel that these changes only came about due to the murder of George Floyd? Had that not happened, do you think we would have seen this kind of push? The discussions about the Safety Act were going on way before that. That's
16, right?
Exactly. So that's in there as well. But what do you guys think about that?
I would say it was definitely a catalyst.
I agree.
I think there definitely was a lot of conversation going on around that even prior to, because going back to when Trayvon Martin got killed, it kind of reignited conversations around criminal justice reform and legal reform. It brought to the table a lot of the fear-mongering that's going on that really shapes our policy and keeps it in place, because most people don't understand the intricacies of our criminal justice system.
Right.
So they're kind of made to obey on fear. And that fear kind of goes all the way back to, post-slavery. to where we have to protect our people from those people.
Right.
And those criminal elements that formed our criminal justice system, like, for example, before slavery ended, our criminal justice system was made up of about 30,000-ish or so poor white immigrants. About 95% were poor white immigrants,
Right.
mainly Irish. Post-slavery, our prison population quadrupled from 1865 to 1910, and it went from 90 to 95% poor white immigrants to 90 to 95% black former slaves. And that's because of how the laws evolved post-slavery to include black codes, and so blacks were being arrested for minor things like vagrancy and other things like that. So those things, that's where our criminal justice system started, and those laws were put in place because of fear.
Right.
And so those things have evolved from generation to generation to Jim Crow. We got to keep them over there because if they come in our community, things are going to go crazy. And we still see the remnants of that today, and it's still being used as a political tactics to keep people voting a certain way.
Yeah.
And so I just encourage people to come to the table, learn your neighbor, get to know each other across social economic lines, and you'll see that people are people. We're all the same. We want the same thing. And once that's normalized, we can no longer make decisions behind fear-based narratives. Let's make decisions on what's best for our entire community, all people. And that's kind of, my thoughts on it.
Yeah, and I would just add, I can't add a lot to that, but I would just add that in 1969 was the Civil Rights Act was passed. This was the year I was born.
Yeah.
People who were born in 1969 were the first, particularly in the African American community, the black community was the first year that people were born free.
Yeah.
Truly in this country, 1969.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what we saw is a continuation of all of the policies that Eric was just talking about were then carried out in the late 70s and early 80s. And so we've had this this tilt and bent towards perpetuating, continuing this effort. And so I think we're, coming out of another, it's almost like another Reconstruction period where we're like, this has been terrible. And it's not, it's been the same old, and that we are trying once again to get it right. What we didn't get right after the Civil War, we are trying to get right now. And it's just, you're right. It's amazing that we're here in 2022, still talking about this, still trying to fix this, and it's time to do it.
It's like the only thing that has not progressed in American society is laws and their legal, the legality. There is a, and I'm pointing at Pastor Fish specific. So there is our executive director showed us a map of Aurora, and you can do this in any city. The website escapes me. I will endeavor to get you guys that website and post it one of these days. But anyway, you can see in the town that you live in, its historic demography and efforts that were made to keep people in those places. Like in Aurora, for example, I live on the east side now. And I won't use any of the terms that they use for these neighborhoods. My goodness gracious. Romania town,
invisible fences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now that I work in housing and I meet people, and I mentioned this to the gentleman last night, Nathan Lantham from Lighthouse Recovery. I meet people, and many times their story does include having been incarcerated, or whatever the case may be, and they're trying to put their lives back together. Right. Do they qualify for a house?
Right.
How can I get an apartment? We are not able to help those people simply because of how our organization operates. And I have not been able to have someone who can help them. And I told we exchanged cards of information. I told him, I need somebody to help me with this small portion of people. It's not very many, but I don't like telling a guy that I cannot help you.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't help you.
Yeah.
Hey, my brother, he's 28. He just did 4 years for drug possession, trying to get his life back together. And he's sleeping on my couch with my sister. What can you guys do for him? There is nothing that we can. Unfortunately, he does not he does not check the boxes for the metrics that we require, and it's emotionally draining.
Yeah.
I want to help these people, so I say all that to say that what you guys are doing and everything that we're talking about is a big wheel. It's a big part of everything to hopefully make a better society with better people.
So this is why I think people of faith need to be interested in policy decisions.
Right.
Amen.
Because poverty is a policy decision.
Right.
People are poor because of the policies that we have. Redlining was a policy decision.
Right.
And so we, as people of faith, if we really want to solve these problems, these social problems, if we want to see people thrive, live out their full potential, to follow the calling that God gives us to in our lives, to be a part of this community that we are part of, then we have to address these policy issues. And I think for a lot of people of faith, it sounds like you're getting into politics, but we all make agreements about how we're going to live together.
Sure.
We all sign social contracts that we all agree to. And poverty is a policy decision. It's a social contract. And what we're saying is that there are problems, and we need to change those policies. And I think people understand that. I think they get nervous about it as a person of faith because they don't want to get into political debates about things, which I totally understand, and we don't want to either. But what we do want to do is make sure that the policies that are in place give people the best shot that they can have to live their full life.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, very well said, sir. Very well said.
And that's nonpartisan, right?
Right, it's nonpartisan.
And that's what I think.
Yeah.
I think some people don't want to enter into the arena because they think it's partisan. It's not.
Right.
Serving the neighbor is not partisan.
Yeah.
Right. Like that is people. Going back to what you had said. I mean, if we care about people, if we care about community, poverty, like we want to eradicate these things. I mean, we have to go to the source,
Right.
And that's the policy.
And just one last piece. So during the pandemic, the government gave out checks to everybody.
Yeah.
And the result of that is that we had the lowest childhood poverty rate ever in the history of this country. And now it's going back up. So again, the reason that people are in poverty is because of these policy choices that we make, and how we spend money and where money goes and how we support or don't support people. And so we can eliminate our crime rates. We can eliminate the number of people that are going into prisons. We can eliminate all these things, but we've got to be willing to make these decisions, these choices.
Yeah.
Right. There is a point that I wanted to share as well. It's about what we're talking about, pre-trial fairness. A judge will, when January 1st comes, in every case, just like as happens now, a judge will continue to have sole discretion on what happens. No matter your crime, the judge will deem your risk to society and everything like this. So judges retain discretion in everything that's going on. And I think that's been a big additional key of the disinformation.
Yes.
And it's just
that judges will have no say is such a
could you imagine a guy committing a murder going in front of a judge saying, hey,
can't do anything.
I can't do anything about it. Can't lock him up. I mean, that's just foolish.
Yes. That's the misinformation that people are getting better alarm systems because the judges aren't going to be able to do anything. Police officers aren't going to be able to do anything. That is all a farce. Right. I mean, it's just 100% that's what it is.
The Pre-Trial Fairness Townhall will be Sunday the 23rd. What are our plans after that to continue the work going on or discussions in the community?
Well, I do want to say that after that, on November the 5th, I have an event. It's purely an educational event. This is not a political event. On the impacts of mass incarceration and the school to prison pipeline. That's going to be on November the 5th here in Aurora at 78 South Lincoln. South LaSalle Street. 78 South LaSalle Street at Community Christian Church in Aurora.
Right next to a live Ting Center.
Yes.
Friends of ours.
One of our partners as well.
That's right.
Yeah. And so we're going to be, it's an event where we're going to be providing resources for men and women post-incarceration, families that have been impacted by incarceration, and having a discussion to provide information around mass incarceration. And the Pre-Trial Fairness Act is huge to that because 74% of people in jails across this nation have not been convicted of a crime. Right. And so that's a huge slice of what we call this mass incarceration of America. We're the most carceral nation in the history of the world, despite having being in the bottom 25% of crime rate in the world. And so that's a disproportionate stat that we've got to address and got to fix. So we're going to be talking about that on November the 5th. You can register at communitychristian.org under events, and you'll see the Community Freedom Give Hope Reentry Summit, and you can register there, or you can just show up and register on site.
Community Freedom Gift Hope.
Give Hope.
Give Hope.
Yep. Okay. And it starts at 10 a.m.
All right. November 5th.
Yep.
Saturday.
Saturday, November 5th. Okay, good stuff.
You
Ladies
get
and
to
gentlemen,
see us
you heard
again.
it here.
So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the mentality is we don't want to be a moment, we want to be a movement. So while this is important that we're doing this town hall, we want to continue to urge public officials that we want to be at the table, not to argue politics, but to make sure that our people are being represented,
Right.
especially the least of these marginalized in our pews as well as in our community. And so we'll continue to sit at the table with the various people that want to be a part of this conversation with us, right?
Okay.
And so that doesn't end come the 23rd. So in addition to kind of putting our investment in the folks that are in there, right, through your reentry program, it's also talking to stakeholders and policymakers and just saying we're going to be a part of those discussions going forward. As if they want to work out some of the nuances, that's fine. Let's do that at the table with the idea that we're implementing it for racial equality.
That's right. Because, hey, man, could you have just, when it works good, it's supposed to work beautiful. It's supposed to work together. That's how it's supposed to be. Right. We could the kind of society we want is possible. The time is 8:53. How can we, the community, help you guys? How can we help you?
Yeah, so first of all, come to the town hall on Sunday. That's the biggest step. Come and get information about what's going on. Hear what the conversation is going on at the state level, what people are talking about. I think and what the implementation is going to look like. That's huge. And then I think to be engaged in talking with your representatives about where they are on this issue, what they're thinking about. There's potential for a trailer bill coming out where there might be some significant changes made to what's already been passed that's supposed to be implemented in January. So to get educated about what that is and to be talking about legislative leaders about what they're planning to do,
right?
And to ask them where they stand on these issues, where they stand on the Pre-Trial Fairness Act, and to be clear about that. I think one of the things we need to be concerned about is that there's been a very much this misinformation campaign, and behind that is a driver to put more power into the hands of states' attorneys and judges, which we've already talked about has historically just been a problem. There are no guidelines for judges there are bond guidelines, but in terms of whether or not somebody gets detained or not, there's not a lot of guidelines there. And judges are making decisions, and they're different depending on the day, maybe, or who's there, because they rotate sometimes those courtrooms. And what the Pre-Trial Fairness Act does is gives very clear guidelines about what's supposed to happen and how that's going to happen. And there's a concern that instead of a presumption of innocence, right, where you're presumed innocent until proven guilty, that there's an effort to move it towards a presumption of detention, that everyone should just be detained. And that's problematic. I mean, that goes against everything that we believe.
Yeah, correct.
And so I think, we need to be paying attention to what's going on and what the legislators are working on. Particularly as people of faith, because at the end of the day, then as faith communities, we end up having to deal with all of the fallout from these bad policy decisions, and so we just want people to be ahead of this and to be actively engaged in it. That's what I would.
Yeah.
All right. The time is 8:55. Katrina Bowe put the link for registration for the November 5th event. Thank you very much for that. That was right on time. Appreciate that. Mr. Jackson says, instead of spending $23,000 annually to incarcerate someone, can you imagine what we could do in terms of housing, supportive services, and community building, and ending poverty with that funding? Our system and mindset around poverty is so incredibly backwards. Thank you all today for your passion and efforts. Much appreciated.
So true.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
That would be.
Absolutely.
And that's the idea, right? Like we're investing. Just it's not. Again, everyone's like, oh, it's going to make us less safe. It's going to put an impact. Actually, it's going to make us more safe, and we can reinvest these dollars in ways that will make everything better.
Right.
Because the way it's going right now, it's just the same thing.
Yeah.
And this will again, change is hard. Anytime you talk about restorative justice, there's always opposition and resistance. But this is going to make us safer. This is going to make people healed. This is going to help the taxpayer, those that just care about economics. I mean, and there's so many ways this is going to move us forward, as you had said.
And if you think that come January, think about, and this is where I've been paused on it for many days. If January 1st coming up is going to make us less safe, we really feel safe now?
Right.
Like, I mean, what
Yeah.
how safe are you now if it's all going to disappear in a few months? Like, what?
It's the illusion.
Crime has spread
It's an illusion.
despite the draconian prison sentences, despite the war on drugs, despite drones and all that. Crime has spread to places where it never was. I mean, so it's so counterintuitive was the word that you used, I think, and that's perfect. It's very counterintuitive. I'm sorry.
And to your question about what to do, I mean, these two do amazing work as faith leaders in the prison system, and I would say that to pay attention to what they're doing, but also if you're a part of a faith community, ask your faith leader what they're doing. What can your faith community be doing? What can your congregation be doing to be more involved with this?
Right.
Both in sort of the resourcing and helping, but also in taking leadership and making these changes. If you're in a congregation and you're not really talking about this or paying attention to this, find ways to grab some resources, get people together, have some conversation about it, meet with your pastor, your imam, your rabbi, your faith leader, and have a conversation about this and figure out ways to be more involved.
Awesome. All right. The time is 8:58. Cindy Morales, good morning to you. Gloria Gerardo, good morning. The show ends on a positive note. What is the message today from you gentlemen going into the weekend for the people of Aurora? Come to the Pre-Trial Fairness Townhall. Come to that town hall.
I think that my hope is that people see that there's hope. Really, that there are people that want to be at this table, and we're not alone on that. And to do this work by yourself is hard and it's frustrating. But there are people that want to gather together to tackle these issues systemically. And so you are not alone. I don't want people to feel like they're stuck or they're paralyzed, they can't do anything. We do have power as individuals and as citizens and as voters, and as people of faith. And so I hope that people come to the town hall, get connected, become a network, become a part of the movement forward.
Wonderful.
And I would say becoming a part of the movement could be beginning just entering the conversations with, people that are outside of your cultural comfort zone, people you normally wouldn't associate with, coming out of your echo chamber, as I like to say, and just getting to know one another. So much of this, the reason why these fear-based narratives take root is because there's a gap between us and our neighbor.
Right.
And so once we can close that gap and see people as people and see the humanity and the potential of people and see the real issues of our society, then we can stop hiding behind these policies that are just driven in fear and they tap into our fear. That's when we can affect real change. And so I would say start there and connect with organizations, entities that are out in your community that are engaging in these conversations and be a part of it. So that would be my encouragement to anyone listening.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I would add at another level, I mean, I agree with all of that there are a lot of good leaders in Aurora who are trying to make changes for the better. And this town hall would be a great opportunity to meet and greet each other and to see each other and to be together. And then to get out of our silos and to start working more collaboratively together on solving some of these problems. And I think we're all for that. We want to really encourage others. I want to encourage others to really be more involved with that effort too, because I think we could really solve and make all these changes that we really all hope to see by coming together and working together. So
very well said. All right, the time is 9:00 a.m. See? We landed the plane, man.
Yeah.
We landed it.
Well done, Curtis.
thank you, Curtis, so much.
No problem. Yeah,
having us.
absolutely.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Good morning, Aurora. Glad to lend our voice to your efforts. We're all friends, so please stay in touch. You have our email, so anytime there's a part 2 or a continuation, just let us know. And Emily says people who feel ostracized by a community would rather watch it burn than to fit into it. We need to help everyone. I love that. David Lloyd, love you guys. Thanks for showing up today. Much appreciated, man. Much appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, have a blessed weekend. Please come to the Pre-Trial Fairness Act Town Hall this Sunday, Society 57, 2 to 5 p.m.
That's right.
And have a blessed and motivated weekend. We will see you Monday. Take care of yourself and each other.